Welcome to the Home and Family Culture Podcast, where I discuss how the attitudes, habits, traditions, roles, and expectations in our homes influence the hearts, minds, spirits, and bodies of our children and the nation. I'm Jody Chafee, and in this episode, I'll be talking with Donna Goff. She's the owner of mentoringourown.com. She is very experienced, very insightful. She mentors other mommies in homeschooling and parenting and home maintenance and self-care. And we had a really great discussion about family work and shepherding style parenting. And it was really awesome and very insightful. I want to let you know also that I was trying out a new recording software. And so the recording isn't stellar, but it's acceptable. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your patience. And I know that if you stay tuned, this is a really great episode. And Donna has really great advice and insights into how to function as a family and to maintain a peaceful home that is a joyful place to be. Thank you again so much for being here, Donna. Let me go ahead and start by reading your bio. Donna and her husband, Roger, have had 7 children. She has 13 grandchildren. They have homeschooled for over 30 years. After 2 decades of parenting, she switched from the factory model of chores to the family model of family work, which later brought her to a shepherding parenting style of raising her children. Donna loves the Lord, is a thriver, an artist, mentor, educator, creative, frugalite, nature lover, gardener, lover of the arts, and too many things to list here. She earned a BA in art and design and an MA education. She is owner of mentoringourown.com, helping moms to succeed in homeschool, home, family, and life. Awesome. Welcome, Donna. Thank you so much for being here. Is there anything else beyond that bio that you could elaborate on?
Just want to thank you for the opportunity today.
Well, the pleasure is all mine. I really appreciate you coming on, and I really wanted to talk to you today about these concepts of how you do family work in your home and how that has influenced your family culture. And because that's a really big part of our family culture is our home maintenance and the way that we treat one another around home maintenance and the way that our family, the feelings that can produce, when we try to work together or not, the environment and the feelings that it can create when you are trying to work together with different levels of mentality and maturity and capacity, and helping your children to, your job as a mother is to teach them to be self-reliant and create a sustainable lifestyle that they can thrive and be healthy. So in your bio, you talked about the family model of family work and then later the shepherding parenting style. So could you elaborate on what that means and how you went from the factory model to the family work to the shepherding model?
Okay, the factory model is a boss-employee model.
Right.
In the factory, the efficiency experts and the boss are working with other adults.
Yeah.
Okay, they're fully functioning adults. They're trained. They've developed an executive function. Children are not miniature adults, but it was the factory efficiency experts that suggested to parents that they use the factory model in the home. Mm-hmm. Well, the parents that were listening to them were the working poor, and their children were destined for the factories. That's not our world today.
Yeah.
And treating children as if they're miniature adults is not helpful. Mm-mm. Excuse me. it leads to unrealistic expectations, blowback, or whatever you want to call it. Because how can a child express to a parent that it's not okay the way they're being treated? It's not okay, that we are being rude, dictatorial, or whatever, because we think I'm the parent and I've got the right to tell you what to do, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So I tell you what to do and you do it. But that doesn't take into consideration that they may not have the executive function of self-regulation, of impulse control developed, and other things. And impulse control is something like you tell your little boy to go clean his room, and he goes down the hall and he walks into his room and he sees his favorite toy. Impulse says, my toy. Impulse control says, no, mom told me to clean my room. Well, and boys go through this change slower than girls. Okay. So they'll grab the toy. And we may have had an older daughter that at that age was just perfect in doing what we asked them to do because they were trying to be a little mommy, and they had executive function at a higher level than their brothers. And so moms will often lose it.
Yeah.
Lose it with their boys. And I started seeing this factory model, and I thought, man, my home's not a factory, and I've got 4 boys. And I was harsh. I thought, hey, your job is to obey, and I'm the parent, and I tell you what to do. Wrong.
Right.
I'm the parent, and I'm supposed to teach you and lead you and guide you to what you need to do. And then I'm reading in the scriptures, and I come across this, a lot of people think that it's okay to hit their kid and force them to do things. And then I start coming across these scriptures in the New Testament that talk about not offending his little ones. And parents, provoke not your children unto wrath.
Yeah.
And it's the same Greek word for provoke as it is for wrath. And I thought, that's interesting. So I'm not supposed to wrath or rage against my children and get them into a rage to get them to do what I want. And it says, but raise them in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. And nurture there comes from the Greek word paideia. And paideia is a Greek concept that there is a way of raising a whole child. It's about their character. It's about their physical development. It's about their mental, intellectual education. It's the whole package.
Yeah.
And it's not all about the academics. And I thought, well, what is the paideia of the Lord? And the closest I could come to it was in Deuteronomy 6, when the Lord talks about that we're supposed to teach our children about him as they rise up and as they go by the way and as they lie down. It's supposed to be a living life together kind of teaching.
Okay.
Not compartmentalizing things, And then in Proverbs 22, where it talks about train up a child in the way they should go. Okay, that's still hearkening back to that. How do we train them up in the way they should go? Well, first we have to be that way.
Yeah.
So if we want our children to be respectful, we need to treat them with respect. If we want them to say please and thank you, then we need to say please and thank you.
Yeah.
And not just I'm the parent. I'm the parent doesn't do it. And what is shepherd parenting? Well, a shepherd had a coat that had deep sleeves, and he would carry the newborn lambs close to him and the injured lambs, and they would become familiar with his heartbeat and his scent and the tone of his voice. And when he would go up a canyon, he would take his staff and tap it along the wall to guide them to where they were supposed to go, and they'd get familiar with his tap. And he'd come to a field. He would go through the field, and there are certain kinds of noxious weeds that would bloat and kill the sheep. So he'd go through and he'd pull up these things to protect the sheep. And if the sheep would fall in a hole, they can't right themselves up. And so he'd use the crook to help lift them up. But the staff and the crook were not used to beat the sheep.
Right.
They were used to protect them and to guide them. And when wolves would come near, use them to scare the wolves away, to drive the wolves away. And when they came back down into their own land where their sheepfold was, the shepherd would lie down in the entry of the sheepfold and protect his sheep with his own body.
Yeah.
The wolves or the stealers would have to...
They'd have to go past the shepherd.
Yeah, they'd have to get past the true shepherd. Of course, false shepherds or under shepherds didn't risk their lives.
Right. So
and didn't have that kind of relationship with their sheep.
Mm-hmm.
So, he talks about the good shepherd, and he talks about come follow me. And I'm thinking, okay, how does that apply to me as a parent? And provoking not my children and teaching them by the wayside came up with a different style of parenting than was vogue when I was growing up. It was children are seen and not heard, and do as I tell you to do, not as I do as I say.
Yeah.
And you will do it because I told you to, because I'm the parent. And it's just totally different,
Yeah.
And I had to make those changes because I said, something is not right. I don't feel good about parenting the way I was parenting, growing up. There weren't a lot of children. I grew up in Hawaii. There weren't a lot of children in my neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get the opportunity to babysit until I was like in junior high. And I have a younger sister that's 2 years younger than me, so I didn't have a whole lot of experience coming into parenting. So the tendency was we take into our parenting the style of our parents,
Sure.
And as good as they are in so many things, I love my parents.
Yeah. They don't know everything, though. Nobody can.
Yeah,
really.
and I had to go through the crucible.
Mm-hmm.
And you asked about family work. Well, family work is just a step along the progression.
Mm-hmm.
The first step is training them in habits. Okay, and we train them one by one
Mm-hmm.
in habits. But a lot of parents don't come along to this until they're older and they have several children and things aren't working and it's chaos. And,
Yep.
you may have to take a different child and work with them for a few weeks while keeping the rest of the system the way it is, not changing anything,
Mm-hmm.
just so you can train them and then take the next child and take the next child. And really, they're not fully trained after 2 weeks.
No. It's their whole childhood.
Yeah, it's the whole child. I mean, they're minors till they're 18 for a reason.
Yeah.
And we want it done yesterday.
Yeah.
And with the millennials, many of the millennials were raised by caregivers and not by parents training them.
Right.
And so they struggle with habits on their own.
Mm-hmm.
And they struggle about attitudes toward work, negative attitudes,
Yeah.
and we have to overcome those. And it's a choice. We have to choose. We have to change our mindset. Instead of thinking, well, this is the way it is or this is the way I was taught, we have to change our mindset and say, but that's a choice.
Yeah.
I could choose to do differently. Nobody is forcing me to parent this way.
Yeah.
Nobody is only my habits, and we're creatures of habit. And the first step on a habit is recognize that you need a new habit. And it's easier to train children if you start training yourself.
Yeah. Starts with
So
you.
I take parents through a 90-day challenge of 7 habits for them to set.
Okay.
And every time they get their little perfectionistic attitude and give up because they didn't do it perfectly,
Yeah.
instead of berating themselves, acknowledge their victories, pick themselves up, dust themselves off, and
Try
just
again.
get going. Yeah,
Yep.
just get going. The benefit for children is you have an adult coming in there and saying, okay, let's make your bed. And we
Let's.
do it every day.
Yeah.
It's done every day until you walk into that room and that bed's made.
Mm-hmm.
And for some children, it's going to be 6. And unfortunately, because of the mistakes that we've made in our relationship before, with some children, it may be 16 or 18.
Right.
That we have to walk them through. And we have to be patient. I think about it. God is a loving God, and he's a patient God, and he's a long-suffering God. And he talks about how he's going to destroy things, but it's sometimes centuries, decades, centuries
gives us
after
a lot
he
of
does
chances.
this. And he's talking about now, because if we die right now, we face him right now,
Right.
but it's not immediate. Every mistake that we make, we don't have him standing over us, appearing to us, saying, okay, you messed up, here's your punishment.
Mm-hmm.
He gives us a lot of grace and a lot of space, and allows us to learn at our own speed. Yet as parents, sometimes we get these misconceptions of how that has to look. And so it's a patient, long-suffering thing, and I really feel that if you wake up in the morning and the first conversation you have is with the Lord, he can help and guide you through the process. But if we're the ones who are taking our kids through the steps, okay, it's time to do dinner. Let's get the table set. Let's so-and-so is going to be helping me at the stove right now. Let's count out how many plates we need, how many knives and forks, and this rich language as we ask our children, well, how many people are going to be here for dinner tonight? Well, there's going to be mom and dad, that's 2, and you, that's 3, and this brother and that sister, that's 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, we need 7 cups, 7 plates, 7 knives, 7 forks, 7 napkins, 7 spoons. Okay, let's count them out.
Yeah.
And they're learning quantitative knowledge.
It's multi-level there.
In the process. Yes, so it's not just this little compartmentalized, we're going to set the table. It's an experience.
Yeah.
So there are certain things that we can do as a family and as a group. Things that we can do: gardening, mealtime, picking up in the living room. I'll dust the top of this table while you dust underneath because you're closer to the floor. Here's your rag, here's mine. And when you get taller, I'll let you do the top. And that they feel like, well, I'm growing up, I can do the top now.
So a lot of this, it takes extra time and energy, I think, from parents. Yeah.
At first.
And so sometimes I think people are like, oh, that's so much more work to get the children involved. But I love what you talked about with shepherding parenting, that it's about the children, right? I mean, you have to place yourself almost on the altar of parenthood and say, not necessarily being a martyr or anything, but to put the children first and say, what, this is what I'm about. This is my business right now. And it takes extra energy. It takes extra patience and work and consistency to to provide them with that upbringing that they need and that training.
And I feel if we want to change and turn our society around, we have to set aside our own selfishness and self-centeredness and what we like in this regard and ask ourselves, are my attitudes toward work impacting my children? Mm-hmm. If I'm working with my child, then my child can't turn around and say, oh, you're turning me into a slave.
Yeah.
And if I'm setting the example, and if I'm setting the example and setting the pace, and I'm the one who is determined to get it done all the way to the finish, if I give it to the child and expect him to be independent before he's got that executive function to carry him through to do that, then I'm spending all my time nagging, threatening, etc. So am I really making life easier? Am I really
No.
We can live more joyfully.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a choice. And so when it comes to this, we need to first choose our own attitude. I had
Yeah.
one woman that I had read one of her books. I can't even remember her name at this point. I just remember, several years ago, hearing her speak at a conference, and she said that she was going along about her day, cleaning her house, taking care of things, and making appointments, and she got a phone call, and it was bad news.
Mm.
And it just really upset her day. She didn't even tell us what it was. And she said she was angry, she was hurt, she was upset. And then her eye caught the clock, and she realized her children were going to be home in a half an hour. And she said to herself, I've got to pull myself together before the kids come home so that they can come home to a safe environment. And all of a sudden, she heard herself talk. And she realized, if I can pull myself together in 30 minutes when my kids walk through that door, I can pull myself together right now.
Mm.
It's a choice.
Mm.
It's a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm choosing to feed this. And the more we feed it, the more we pat ourselves on the back. I deserve to feed it and all this. And it really doesn't serve us any good purpose.
Mm-mm.
It doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't make it better. It doesn't even make us better.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'd say that comes
so,
back to mindfulness. If you ever practice mindfulness, you know, just being aware of your surroundings at that moment and your feelings at that moment, that you can stop and go, this isn't serving me.
well, and, you know, it goes back to Stephen R. Covey said
Mm-hmm.
that between a stimulus and a response, we always have a choice.
Yeah.
And I like to teach my children that too. Well, he made me do this. No. He did this action, and you have a response. And in between that action and your response, you have a choice.
Yeah.
Are you going to choose to take the good road, or are you going to choose to feed into the problem and make it worse?
Right.
And I would talk to him about what was your part in the issue.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to hear about the list that you have of what the other guy did.
Right.
What was your part? What did you do to help bring this on? Did it come out of clear blue? Okay. Your response was your part.
Yeah. Well, my parents call that whatever happened, and then there's your story about it. And, you know, your reaction to the story, not necessarily what really happened. And I think that, you know, when you're talking about this as like our shepherd, being a shepherd to our children, and how if we try to dictate, if we're not being a shepherd and we try to dictate to them what they should be doing, and we become nags and we bicker, you know, we have that choice too. We have that choice then to stop and go, you know what? My child needs a little bit more shepherding right now, not nagging. And to stop and to teach them and mentor them and walk with them and to love them. Yeah?
Well, and a lot of times we don't even see that we're part of the problem.
I do. For me.
You know, I mean,
but yeah, no, I think
we
you're right.
exacerbate it by having expectations of them being independent because it'll be convenient for us and easy for us, or because we need them to be, whether they're ready or not. And that's a lot to put on them.
Yeah.
You know, I look at my kids now. They're grown. They're responsible. They work and stay out of debt. They work hard. They're creative in their solutions to things. They're problem solvers.
Mm-hmm.
And so I look at it and I think, well, then switching didn't damage them.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe some of the damage that they did have was caused because I was so late in the game of figuring it out, you know? I mean, it was hard. It was hard to make the change because I would yell at my kids and I was strict. And I was missing the element of the patience, the long suffering, and also missing the element of they needed more training. Expecting them to do before. And it made me not a good parent at that time. And so coming along to getting to that point where I had to pull myself up and say, part of this is your fault. And you can change it.
Some
You
humility
have,
there. Yeah.
yeah. And, when we see God as a retributive, angry,
Hmm.
and sure, there is stuff in the Bible that shows that, but that was after warning after warning
Right.
after warning, and long suffering, and the prophets gently teaching and nurturing. And there's a lot of nurture, and there's a lot of love, and there's a lot of invitation in the Bible too.
Mm.
And I have to realize that the retribution, the angry God, was not his first mode.
Right.
His first mode was always invitation.
Yeah.
Come follow me. It was his example. And so, as I thought about it, I slowly changed as a parent as the Bible worked through me,
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that use certain incidences in the Bible to excuse totally inappropriate behavior by parents.
Right.
For instance, like when Christ came in and drove out the money changers.
Mm.
Money changers were fully functioning adults who were taking advantage of, they were not just adults that were taking advantage. He didn't go all around the whole culture and everywhere adults were taking advantage of other adults. Did he do what he did with the money changers? But they were in his father's house.
Mm.
They were in God's house. They were charged with leadership in Israel,
Mm-hmm.
and
They were
they
not
had,
ignorant.
yeah, they were not ignorant, and they were not doing what they were supposed to be doing as leaders in God's kingdom,
Mm-hmm.
in his church, in their office that they were supposed to be leading the people, and they were abusing the people through that. They were using it as an instrument of their own power.
Right.
That is totally different
Not the same.
from a child who's learning. And I had a friend say, well, Christ drove out the money changers. I can, do this to my child. And I'm like, no,
No, not the same.
that is not licensed, because he's given several scriptures that talk about do not offend, or he who offends the least of these, my little ones,
Yeah.
and it would be worse than if a millstone was hung around their neck.
Right.
It'd be better if they were not even born.
Mm.
So he really spoke out about the abuse of children. Yeah. And our culture didn't see it as abuse. Everybody did it. Yeah. It was a harsh reality. And having to make that turn and saying, wait a minute, that's not what the Bible says.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is not what the Bible says. And so I feel we train them in the discipline of habit, and then we take them into family work. And then as they become physically big enough to be able to do the rest of the work that we do in the home, the things that maybe one or two people can work on together, but you can't fit the entire family into the bathroom.
Right.
And only so many people could be reaching in the refrigerator at the same time. One or two people working on removing shelves to clean, a refrigerator and everything. Those kinds of tasks that are more suited for that kind of training, the things that mom hold back and don't usually put on the chore list.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the kinds of things that I feel that is a time for children to be trained as a apprentice to you.
Right.
So you're doing the discipline of habit with your little tiny tykes, and you keep it going until it gets habit for that child. And then when they're about 3 or 4, they're physically big enough to help you in family work. And then when they're about 8-ish, they're ready to do the rest of the work with you one-on-one. And if they do that for several years, they're fully trained in how to complete the tasks, attention to detail, quality of work. All these things are character developing that they carry over into their studies as well.
Mm.
Okay. And so um, somewhere after 12, close to 16ish, um, they're ready to really take on, for girls earlier than boys,
Mm-hmm.
but really take on their education in a really deep way. They'll sit down and they'll figure out, what do I need to do to get into the college of my choice? Where am I right now? What do I need to do to get there? They're ready to be fully assigned a system in the home because for at least 4 years, they've been helping you do all the systems that are not part of family work.
Right.
And so now they are fully trained. If you got sick or you had to leave the house, they can carry on running and orchestrating that house, the whole thing.
Yeah.
But you give them a portion of it, a system to do for a year. And then the next year they may have a different system, you know, and you just slowly bring each child into that apprenticeship.
Can you
But
describe?
family work
Oh,
is right in the middle.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, family work is right
Yeah,
in the
that's
middle.
what I wanted to ask you and to elaborate on. You shared one time how you decided to transition from the factory work to the family work when you saw your child doing the dishes. Can you tell that
Yeah,
story?
yes. My son was 6. So this would have been, well, he was not quite 6 yet. This was about year 2000. And we had been doing family chores since the 80s,
Mm-hmm.
you know, with my older kids. And this child got dishes.
So they were on a rotation basis type
They
of
were
a
on a
thing, like a
rotation.
chore
We
check.
had bathrooms, we had vacuuming, we had taking out the garbage, we had dishes. And of course, for that whole 2 decades, I've been telling the older kids when they got the dishes, don't worry, next week you're going to be on trash. Takes you a few minutes to take it out, line the can, you're done. And I thought I was building them up and encouraging them. But somehow this day, you know, a friend of mine shared, we had this book group, mothers, and we had just gone through Sidetracked Home Executives, and we'd made our little systems, and then she brought this article about family work for us to read. And I thought about it deeply, and I came home and I just sat and watched my children. And that day I just happened to be watching my little boy do the dishes. He didn't complain.
Uh-huh.
He didn't dawdle. I mean, you know, he wasn't playing with the soap and things like that. He was just slowly doing the dishes by himself, putting them in the dishwasher after the dinner. And I watched him and I felt this. It's almost like the Lord just kind of opened it up for me to see what was the energy or feeling in that room. And I felt this abandonment for him.
Mm-hmm.
And I started thinking, wow, all the other kids are downstairs playing. The whole family evacuated the kitchen, and here he is, and I'm just sitting there watching him. I'm not even helping him. And I'm watching him, and I'm thinking, he's alone. He's feeling isolation. He's probably feeling resentment that everybody else gets to play. And I started to say, hey, next week you're going to be on trash. And as soon as it came out of my mouth, it was like, oh man, that is really hollow. That's not encouraging.
Uh-huh.
I thought I'd been encouraging all these years. No, I was just adding insult to injury.
Right.
I said, there is something wrong with this picture. And then I thought back about it, and I thought about before we started doing chores when my children were really young, and that they just gravitated to what I was doing. And I was sorting clothes, and my son that was about 20 months old would say darts, lights.
Cute.
And he would help me do it, and he would help me unload and reload the dishwasher, and we did things together. And I thought, well, that's the way it was when I was growing up. We didn't have chores. We all worked together. Yeah. And I talked to other adults, and most of them, that was the same MO. This chore chart thing is the caper chart is a military, and a military goes into scouting, which is a paramilitary preparation, if
Right.
you will, and it's also corporate.
Okay.
You've got your little job
Yeah.
here and you do your part and stuff like that. And I thought, no, we're going to collaborate. Anyway, I thought about how we started and I thought, why did I trash that? It was working
Yeah.
because I was a young mom and everybody was talking about chore charts. And I thought that was how you had to do to be a good parent. And I took something that had been working
Mm-hmm.
and got rid of it. And for 2 decades, did the chore war dance, threatening them to finish, enticing them. Hey, when you get this done, you can do this.
Uh-huh.
If you want to do this, then do this.
Right.
If you want to have that, do this. And then what happens when they decide I don't want that?
Right.
Then you
How do
then
you
you have
bribe
to come
them?
up with something else. And
Again.
that's yeah. How do I get my children to do what I want them to do? Well, I find that parents do the same thing with academics
Mm.
and the same thing with chores. When they get kids home to homeschool nowadays, they just give them a pile of stuff and tell them to go do it. And then they cut back and they cut back and they cut back, and they're finding that the child is doing less and less and less and taking more and more time until they won't do it at all.
Right. There's no intrinsic
And
value in the actual accomplishment of
yeah,
the
well,
work.
it's busy work.
Right.
It's busy work,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't have any habits as a foundation, so they don't have that character development and the executive function to carry them through. And then parents are expecting them to stay with that page until they get it done. If it takes them an hour and a half and their attention span is only 15
Right.
minutes. So, I looked at how I homeschooled.
Mm-hmm.
I looked at how I ran my home, and we went to a group learning model for all the general knowledge because it's non-sequential.
Yeah.
We plug it in sequence in schools because we're trying to keep the kids there till they're 18.
Right.
There's a lot of stuff that doesn't matter what year you learned it in.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we do the one-on-one. So we did the discipline of habit, the family work, the one-on-one training and work. And for school, we went to a generalized general knowledge together as a group. And if they weren't developmentally ready to sit there and be attentive, I didn't care if they were building on the floor,
Mm-hmm.
so long as they didn't talk to somebody else. I said, the minute you start talking to somebody else, then you're distracting them
Yeah.
and me. And so I don't mind if you play or you draw. And of course, while their hands were busy, they were listening.
Yeah.
A friend of mine solved it by doing humanitarian service projects, taught even her 3-year-old how to hat loom.
Mm. That's cool.
And then, yeah, and so they did like 32 hats that fall. So their hands were busy while they weren't fighting and stuff, and they were able to listen to the stories that she read. And so we went to a similar model for homeschool that we did for cleaning the house,
Yeah.
developmentally friendly, group learning, and then the one-on-one within their attention span.
Yeah.
So the same thing with training them with how to clean the refrigerator as training them for math. A little bit.
Yeah. You're
So I got.
coaching them. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Donna. I really loved what you shared. Can you just give us one last how to contact you, what your services are really quick? And then one last question after that.
Okay. mentoringourown.com.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a blog. I have a free newsletter, different topic every week. First week of the month is homeschool. The second one is home management and home culture.
Mm-hmm.
The third week of the month, I do mom culture, about you,
Mm-hmm.
taking care of mom, because we're the heart of the home.
Yep.
We keep it running. We're also the light
Mm-hmm.
in the home. And then last week is a summation. Sometimes it's special or whatever. And then I do free webinars every week. For instance, I do a Ditch the Stress webinar. I do one on Power of an Hour, which is about how to do this family learning model.
Mm-hmm.
And you can cover so much stuff, it would blow your mind what you can teach in that hour.
Mm-hmm.
And I also teach ones on family work where I go into it in depth. And
Awesome.
I've got some scheduled for 2017.
Awesome.
And I do mentoring, and I have products for homeschooling resources available. So those are the kinds of things that are available on my website.
Awesome.
And we have a Facebook group. So if people have questions, they can reach me there too. So
cool. So one last question is, since this is going to be airing near the beginning of the new year, perhaps next week, what is a good New Year's resolution for self-care and home maintenance that you could recommend?
I'm working on one right now. It's well, I'll be doing Ditch the Stress. It's a 90-day challenge. Okay, and it includes homeschooling, but it starts with taking care of yourself spiritually, and then physically, and then those really crucial areas of home management that get in our way, that cause us the frustration, that if we address and we do it consistently, within 2 weeks we'll be blown away by how much we've actually gotten done and how easy it becomes. It will be hard at first because we're not used to habits, good habits, and change, okay? But we can ditch the stress, invite the calm, and we can live in victory.
Awesome.
And my word for 2017 is joy. We can choose it.
Oh, thank you. That was so awesome. Donna Goff, she has a lot of great insights and experience about helping her family and teaching her family. And she has really great resources on her website at mentoringourown.com. And I love that story that she talked about with her 5 or 6 year old, her son, and when he was doing the dishes and having that aha moment of realizing that if there are chores that you can do as a family, that you should do them as a family. And that environment allows kids to feel loved and to learn in a loving and kind and welcoming environment. And it gets rid of that factory style of labor in the home. And it's something that I personally need to work on too. And helping my kids feel like we're there for them and that they don't have to do things on their own, especially before they've developed the capacity to think clearly through those mental capacities and abilities that they don't have yet. So I learned a lot from Donna in this episode. It was really awesome. Thank you again for listening. Please rate, subscribe, comment, share, listen on Stitcher, SoundCloud, iTunes, or my website at homeandfamilyculture.com.